Right. Okay, we should be live in a few seconds. There's always a slight lag. We'll just do some audio tests first, make sure that everybody can hear us. Right.
Yeah, looks like it's live. Feel free to write in the chat. Let us know if you can hear it.
Hello, everyone. It's Brian here from the QTube with Mike Ladouceur. Can you just confirm that you can hear both of us? Mike, can you just say hi?
Hi, everyone. Make sure you can hear my audio as well.
Are we both...
Cool. Gavin says he can hear us both. Thanks for joining, Gavin.
And we're both clear, yeah? It's not like you're hearing Mike through my microphone or something strange like that. Yeah, we're both clear, because sometimes you get weird. Does it seem to be working fine? Can somebody confirm that? Some echo from Mike, right. You might be hearing him through mine, possibly. What I can do is mute mine.
Yeah, let's see. Hopefully with you muted, it's still, you can still hear me. So cool. Yeah, anyway, I guess I'll just give a quick introduction to everything sort of planned for tonight. Well, actually, maybe Brian, why don't you introduce just the clip, because it's more on QTube's end. Do you want to do that?
Yeah. Okay. Great. I'll have to remember to mute myself when you're speaking, otherwise there's a strange artifact. So yeah, hi, thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We're going to spend about an hour today, and one of the things that we want to do is to build it around the Sprite Fright animation, which is a fantastic animation by the Blender Foundation, Blender Studio. We used part of it for a previous score relief, but we're now making the whole film available, which I think, from memory, I think it's something like 10 minutes long. I don't actually remember. But it really is a superb animation with dialogue and everything. It's very dynamic. So it's a great practice for you guys. It's a great thing to potentially include in your portfolio. And Mike's going to talk a little bit about how to make the most of it, really, in terms of practice and building a portfolio. So it's available from the library. We're running a discount on that for Black Friday. So we're giving 50% off up until the 1st of December, basically. So it's a great time to grab that. And it's a great time to grab it as well, because in about a month's time, we're going to be launching the next score relief. And that's also going to be based on an animation. So it would make a lot of sense to grab Sprite Fright now, really. So yeah, that's essentially it. I'm here really just to do the intros and sort of manage the chat a little bit and try and make sure that we try and address any questions that you guys want to include in the chat. But basically, this is going to be Mike's presentation.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. So yeah, just a quick overview. Mike Ladouceur. I'm a composer and I'm also an educator. I'm a professor at both Royal College of Music and Cambridge University, where I teach film music curriculum, both in undergraduate and primarily post-grad level. So yeah, I'm a friend of the QTube. I'm glad we've done quite a few of these. It's just nice to come back and have a chance to do these live streams and answer some of your questions along the way. So tonight's plan is, as Brian mentioned, I'm gonna kind of scrub through a bit this new, the full version that we have of Sprite Fright, that he has available in the library now, and kind of talk about a few different aspects of this, not just highlighting, why this is a great film, but thinking a little bit more about how you could use this in a few different ways to kind of build your portfolio out. The film is 10 minutes 30, so it's quite long. But what I'm thinking is that how you could kind of score all of this and then treat it as having sort of like long, medium, and short form content that you can share out of it. So I want to talk through that, as well as go into some of the winners from the score relief competition that this was used in, and to kind of give my opinion on why I think some were a little bit more successful than others. And at least I was a judge in that competition. And so just from my point of view, there was a few judges, but just from my point of view of why I think something maybe stood out to me and kind of made it to the next round. So let me just share this over so that we can look at the video. Great. So as I mentioned, I'm going to play through a couple bits of this. So you'll probably, if you're very familiar with this, and maybe if you scored this for the score relief, then you'll recognize a lot of it. But that was only about, I think, 3.5 minutes or so for the competition. So we've got kind of 3 times as much content in this. And I think you guys did a great job cutting that down for the competition, because I think it still tells sort of the whole story. But there's a few extra bits in here that we get to kind of see as we go through it. So you just full screen that. And let's just play through a couple bits.
Mr. Snail. Oh, you cute little cornua spersum. Latin name, bonus points.
Oh, can't believe we got stuck with the tree hugger. If I have to hear the Latin name for one more animal, I swear I'm gonna kill her.
Relax, Sugar Buns. While she does all the work, we'll have all the fun.
Yeah, and get wasted out of our minds.
Way ahead of you, man.
Come on, team. We mustn't dilly-dally when there's so much nature to see. I was thinking we should call our class project Fun Guys in a Forest. Get it? Because we're a group of fun guys and also fun guys. Shush! That's a low wagtail, and she's in distress. There, my little Montecilla flower. Oh, look at her go. Wow.
Out of the way, dorkwad. We're camping.
So I'll just kind of bring it up to there for now. So a couple things that might jump out. One, the version that I'm showing you is with all the original music and the sort of dialogue and sound effects. So part of that includes from the original, you can hear that so far there's been mostly diegetic music in this. And I think this is quite an interesting thing when you're thinking about kind of putting this as part of a reel. I think in the competition, because it was cut down, we only saw this boombox like for, quite a short bit. But that was actually something that stuck out to me in the judging, was there's a couple people who really sort of incorporated that effectively. And so I could see like a real effort to try to blend that in with the background score. So just to talk briefly about that. So far we had kind of an intro of underscore. And then as soon as this came in, now we just switch straight over to diegetic music. It's hard sometimes when you're trying to score something for like a showreel piece to try to incorporate that, because the likelihood is if this was like an episode of TV or if this was a feature film, it would be just that. You would have kind of one or the other the way that it is here. But if you're trying to show that off, that could be something that's a bit of a feature. So this might be something that with this clip, maybe you try to do this as diegetic music and get something that sounds really good, something that you can kind of have as a totally different style from the back and or from the background music and showcase that. I thought this was an interesting point to point out, because with diegetic music, I get asked this question all the time, and with some of my students, both at Royal College of Music or up at Cambridge, or with students from my online course who are doing some of these, kind of how to approach that. And so I think it's something that if you're doing diegetic music, it should pretty much ignore what's going on in the background. You should think of it as if you're licensing a track. Most of the time, that's how it's used. So I don't think you should worry too much about like trying to get it to line up with any hit points, because then it breaks that wall. So that's something that I often see people trying, is like, oh, I want to be clever. I want it to make it feel like it's coming from the boombox, but then kind of come out of that. and go back into, something else or line up with a hit point, I think that can sometimes be a little bit counterintuitive. So just a thought on that. It's an interesting sort of opportunity. So scrub ahead a little bit. So obviously this is an important moment in this film because this is where we first start to notice that, there's a walking mushroom. So it's something that's quite unique, and it's a turning point in the story. So this is kind of the turning point from Act 1 into Act 2 of this film. This is where we now start to we realize that this is more than just a class trip and there's something off about where they've decided to camp. So you'll notice that's the point where the diegetic music faded out and the underscore faded in. So that was an interesting opportunity and a good place to try and sort of create that transition rather than just having the boombox stop. It makes it very believable because then when the diegetic music fades out, we understand that it's still going on in the background, but now the underscore kind of takes over to help support the story.
It's incredible! It's a new species!
What the bloody hell are those things? It's like a gnome shagged a mushroom.
They're absolutely adorable!
Yeah, absolutely bloody adorable. And I bet we'll make a fortune if we catch one of those things.
We'd be famous.
Get on MTV. I wonder what they taste like.
Oh, we really shouldn't disrupt their habitat.
Right.
So this is another section where we have diegetic music because it's coming from the mushrooms they're singing. So far the underscore cues have been minimal. Although this is one that I think, and I saw this done effectively in the competition, was a lot of people kind of incorporated, made their own, sort of tune that the mushrooms would be singing through this. So I thought that was something that was done quite effectively, kind of blended in and out of that underscore. So we get a few of these. This just gives us a little bit more context in the film.
Something.
I think what's interesting about having the longer form film rather than the shorter sort of 3.5 minute version is that you get more of an opportunity for space as well. So whenever you do a short film that's only a few minutes long, it's often easiest just to make music wall to wall. Because if you have like half a dozen 10-second cues throughout, every single time music comes in and out, it really breaks that. And it draws a lot of attention to those moments where it comes in and out. So I think having this longer form also allows you the opportunity to think about a bigger arc. And it's also just good practice for if you're scoring a longer film, if you can do 10, 15 minutes as a short, you can do a half hour, you could do 90 minutes of a feature film. I think it's a harder jump to go from like 2-3 minutes to 10 minutes than it is to go from 10 minutes to 45 minutes. Because I think then you just get used to understanding where cues come in and out.
But they're psycho! You've got to get me out of these, hurry! They're gonna kill us!
Right foot, left foot, leaf and stone. You picked the wrong camping spot, bitches. Sprite them!
Sprite this!
So I think it's interesting. We get this whole sequence as well now. So before we kind of just saw when they first captured the one guy and were burning him, and then it kind of jumps to her running away. So now we get this whole kind of action sequence. And that in itself, is an interesting sort of cue that could be scored through all this. So then this picks up more where what was used in the competition.
I don't want to hurt you. Just keep your distance. All right then. Eat salt, you little green bastards.
It's also a bit more gruesome. We get all of this.
Those punks treated the world as...
So I'd say just one of the biggest advantages of all this is that you have each of these scenes is a bit longer form. So we got kind of all of that previously, but now it had to be kind of like a short action sequence that had to come straight out of something else. So I think you could just get the chance to think about making kind of a larger cue and maintaining the energy, especially with this sort of action cue, fight scene, chase scene, that kind of thing. And so now you have kind of two of them through this. You have this whole section where they're kind of killing off all the friends, or classmates. And then where she's running to escape is sort of a separate cue in itself, or can be. So.
We all together now. Friendly sprites rise with the sun. Friendly bees, friendly gum. We won't stop till the day is fun. Friendly, yum, yum.
Danger, danger, I'm a forest ranger about.
So then we get a bit more, there was a lot of kind of needle drops in this, in the original. So they had a few different tracks they must have licensed. But again, that gives you another opportunity to either use something like that, or you can kind of, reprise something that you made earlier for the film. So cool. So I just wanted to kind of go through that first. I'm just being a little mindful of time. But overall, to kind of recap, what I think is really nice and advantageous over having something that's a bit longer form like this is you get the opportunity to have a bit more space and to really think about like a bigger arc for each scene and have a chance to kind of develop your themes and do that a lot more. What I think this can be, another kind of idea that I wanted to cover in this is how you can use things in sort of multiple forms. So one thing is scoring the whole project, and then you have this 10.5-minute film that you could use on your website. But you also have some of these individual scenes that you could kind of cut down, and you could use those for different submissions. So maybe you are applying for a program, whether that's like, a master's course, or applying for like a summer program, an intensive, something like that. Most applications, maybe 10 minutes is kind of the limit, and they'd like to see 3 or 4 pieces. So this is something that you could grab a little excerpt out of this, and there's probably, a handful, maybe 5 or 6 different little excerpts that you could make from this. So you could have kind of like a chase scene, sort of action scene. You could have more of like a mystery sequence, or in the beginning, everything is very like pastoral. So there's a lot of options there. So I think that's interesting to think about scoring this like full 10.5 minutes and then cutting this into smaller bite-sized chunks. And then also just to promote yourself, you could cut some of those smaller chunks into, 1 minute or 30-second clips, bits and pieces that you could use to promote yourself. So I think it's always interesting to think of how you can get multiple uses out of any project that you do. And this is something that, I'd be happy to bring this up kind of towards the end of the session too, and talk more if you guys have any questions about that. Something I always encourage and that I always do in my own work is think about, this will serve the project and I'll do the project really well, but how can this also help me, whether that is having a really nicely recorded cue that I just have as part of my audio reel or something like that. So cool. So yeah, fantastic. Nice to be releasing this full version of that. So next thing I wanted to jump on to is I've just got all the winners from the scoring competition up here. And I wanted to kind of just go through the top 3 and just give a little bit of a kind of review or sort of talk about what I think worked really well about this, about each of these that might have helped them advance. As well as when you're writing for a competition where, because these are fairly common, where the top prize is recording your piece with an orchestra. So there's a handful of these, especially around Europe. There's a lot of different competitions that have that. So just some things to kind of consider when you want to kind of make use of the ensemble that you're writing for. So let's play through a few of these. And I'm just going to play through them in full because they're each just a handful of minutes. And then I'll kind of just highlight some things that I thought worked really well about each of them.
I was thinking we should call our class project Fun Guys in a Forest. Get it? Because we're a group of fun guys and also fun guys. Shush! That's Elo Wagtail, and she's in distress. There, my little Montecilla flower. Oh, look at her go. Wow.
Out of the way, dorkwad. We're camping here.
Finally. Time to get that barbecue burning. Just need a bit more salt.
Incredible! It's a new species.
What the bloody hell are those things?
Greetings. I'll be right down.
What are you guys?
We are sprites. We take care of the animals. Fancy herds.
Guys, huh? Guys? Guys?
For leaf and stone. You picked the wrong camping spot. Sprite them!
Eat salty little...
I'll give you that one, Brother Bird. All right, sprites, let's burn the bodies and have some peppermint tea.
Cool. So very good job, Robert. I remember also when I was going through these, when we were doing the judging, this was genuinely, and I said this then, it was genuinely really difficult because there was so many that were of a really high quality, and it was really hard to kind of discern like what makes something a little bit better than another. Because the quality of the demos was really high, and just the quality of scoring it, and the approach to the picture was really high. So a couple things that I think this does really well. One, I think it is very tight to picture. And not that it has to be Mickey Mouse necessarily, but that it really supports each scene. So there is a clear musical identity for each thing that he's trying to achieve. So, when it shows the bird, there's a very clear musical identity for that. When we see them, when they're kind of first roasting the body of the classmate, there's a very clear musical identity. So I'd say this is kind of first and foremost, just not for competitions in general, film scoring. When you want to get your idea across, you have to make it pretty obvious to whoever's listening to it. It's something I found a lot when writing for TV, especially, that there's no room to make something kind of too ambiguous or nuanced. If there's a theme, you want to present it clearly. And so I think Robert does that very well here. Let's listen to Pablo's second place entry. Oops, it's not forward. And this one also got recorded with the Northern Film Orchestra.
I was thinking we should call our class project Fun Guys in a Forest. Get it? Because we're a group of fun guys and also fun guys. Shush! That's Elo Wagtail, and she's in distress. There, my little Montezilla flower. Oh, look at her go. Wow.
Out of the way, dorkwad. We're camping here.
Finally! Time to get that barbecue burning. Just need a bit more salt.
It's incredible. It's a new species.
What bloody hell are those things?
Greetings! Huh? I'll be right down.
What are you guys?
We are sprites. We take care of the animals, plants, birds,
Guys, huh?
pieces of grass.
Guys?
Left for leaf and stone. You picked the wrong camping spot. Sprite them!
Eat salty little...
I'll give you that one, brother bird. All right, sprites, let's burn the bodies and have some peppermint tea.
Cool. So very nice job, Pavel, on this as well. So what I think this one also, as I mentioned with the previous, there's a very clear identity for each scene. There's very clear musical identity for each moment. But what I think this one does that might have helped it stand out just a little bit more is I think particularly some of the transitions that kind of go from one sequence to another. So this feels a little bit more fluid, where it's kind of each scene is intentionally leading into the next. So it feels the whole thing is a bit more cohesive. And it's something to be mindful of where you don't want it to feel like it's too many kind of individual sequences and just transitions in between. So I think this is something that might be a little bit more developed, where we have a sense of it. When I think about these transitions, you could think like, oh, I ended on, let's say a G chord, but then the G chord might be also transitioning, into a key change on the next one. That can help, but it's also things like having a melody line that leads kind of from the end of one and into the other. So this is something that I notice where, like, especially if you listen to like Rachmaninoff, is amazing at this, where kind of it's almost like a melody never ends because after it does, you're already halfway through a new one. So I think thinking about making all of your transitions really clear and smooth on top of giving each moment a clear musical identity can really help make something feel very cohesive. So really nice job on this one. Let's jump ahead now to the winner. And I will jump through you, Brian.
I was thinking we should call our class project Fun Guys in a Forest. Get it? Because we're a group of fun guys and also fun guys. Shush! That's Elo Wagtail, and she's in distress. There, my little Monticello flower. Oh, look at her go. Wow.
Out of the way, Dorkwad. We're camping here.
Finally! Time to get that barbecue burning. Just need a bit more salt.
It's incredible. It's a new species.
What bloody hell are those things?
Greetings! I'll be right down. What are you guys? We are sprites. We take care of the animals. Plants, birds, insects.
Guys,
Pieces of grass.
Guys?
They're for leaf and stone. You picked the wrong camping spot. Sprite them! I'll give you that one, Brother Bird. All right, sprites, let's burn the bodies and have some peppermint tea.
Cool. So very good job on this. This was a really well done score. Sorry, I'm just looking for, there it is, Philip, who is the winner. So yeah, I think this is just overall, it's really well done. And just to kind of point out some things that I think this did just a little bit kind of more over the top than some of the other submissions. Because I remember this, when you're judging these, it's usually in a couple stages. And so I believe that this I saw kind of from the first stage and was at the top of my list. This was one that I think when you're listening to this, it's the orchestration is very developed. And I think that's something that stands out immediately. It's something that is very recognizable craft-wise when you're listening to music and when you're watching something, because when you have very developed orchestration craft, it really gives you access to like a very broad color palette that gives you so much more control over nuance. So just to any advice, for like, what are some of the things that you can kind of work on, or things that you want to be focusing on, is that orchestration cannot be, kind of understated. I think orchestration craft is something that stands out very blatantly when you're listening to something. So let's listen to a couple bits and pieces of this.
Fun guys in a forest. Get it? Because we're a group of fun guys and also fun guys. Shush! That's Elo Wagtail, and she's in distress. There, my little Monticello flower.
So even just on that transition, it's chords that make sense from what they're coming from and for where they're headed to. But it's also this change of color from having these very light winds and pits to having all of a sudden kind of like a broad, deep string section. And it's how these lines are harmonized. I think that's something that really helps stick out. I believe it's the next section immediately after. If you listen to the winds, it's also just having things like harmonized doublings within the wind section that really kind of help it feel very rich. Let's listen to that.
Oh, look at her go. Wow.
Out of the way, Dorkwad. We're camping here.
Finally! Time to get that barbecue burning. Just need a bit more salt.
Yeah, there's also a lot of like the variety of colors always changing in this score. So I think that's something that's, again, comes back to kind of that nuance. Making a decision over why in the beginning of a section would you have kind of clarinets and bassoons doubling, and then at the end of that phrase have horns and bassoons doubling. It gives a sort of direction to the phrase. And that choice, having it go from sort of one blend towards another, might make something feel like it's progressively getting darker or getting brighter. So here, there's another kind of a couple small examples of that. Another thing that really stands out with this whole submission is each of these transitions are really smooth and quite layered. So there might be, like the themes are presented very clearly, and it might be over a variety of textures, but it's having that kind of those sense of layers where it's not just a melody over some chords. There might be a whole rhythmic texture that's evolving, and then we get melodic fragments that are played over the top. And it helps us give this kind of overall sense of maybe kind of towards this section where you have this sense of danger, but then it's also quoting these themes and helping direct our attention towards the characters or maybe who's giving that danger, where that danger is coming from. There's also a lot of development of the themes. So you can hear it very clearly, but sometimes the melody might be changed. by some slight intervals just to fit the chords a bit more, but it's still very recognizable. So we can understand what theme it's relating to, and that it's like, oh, this is a dark and intense arrangement of that theme here versus where it might have been presented very bright to begin with. So yeah, just want to share some thoughts on these. More broadly speaking, I think this is something that, again, I get asked quite a lot, or have a lot of students who submit to different competitions. And it's kind of thinking about, like, when you do a competition, you know, you're not collaborating with a director. So it is a bit different than if you've got a project kind of on your own. And so when you're responsible for kind of creating all of that for a competition, you want to highlight the things that they're sort of showcasing. So you want to try and showcase, like, that if they're using a full orchestra, how to make best use of that ensemble. But the same with, you know, sorry, I'm getting distracted by the YouTube stream changing while I'm also looking at this. So also, while you're collaborating with people, you have to kind of fall in line with what the needs of the project are. So it's a little bit different. When you do a competition, it's not the same thing as doing a project, full stop. But I think the main thing that translates in that is just the sensitivity to picture and how you deal with the narrative and how you deal with the story. So again, some things that I think can help develop your skills on both ends of that. Definitely orchestration craft, as well as melodic writing, harmony. Those things are kind of, you know, bread and butter. But I think the nuance in orchestration, when you're writing for orchestra or doing a competition, when you're writing with an orchestra, then those are things that really help something stand out. And then on top of that, with the sensitivity to picture, it's really about how you handle themes and how that is showcased kind of to direct the attention towards a particular point of view of a character. So making those transitions smooth and having those themes really kind of understanding how they fit within their texture. Cool. Sorry, I felt like I was ripping through a lot of that just because I want to make sure that we did kind of go through the whole clip and had a chance to look at all these. Now I want to open it up a little bit more to some questions, and have some time to kind of speak about a few different topics. I did see one just to start back here in the chat. It was from Dominic Mobilia, just talking about doing, like, scoring a scene live. So I will just say that if you look at some of the previous masterclasses we did, I do go through a whole cue that I did from one of the, I think it was another Blender project, the Caminandas one. So there's sort of two parts to that. So definitely feel free, because the first masterclass was shown to talk through kind of the approach and the spotting for that. And then the second is going through my whole score for it in quite a lot of detail. So feel free to check that out. That's a good reference for that one. And yeah, just kind of looking through here. If there's any other questions, feel free to throw more in the chat kind of as we go. Great. Brian, did you have any that sort of stuck out to you?
Right. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Brilliant stuff. And I hope everyone's excited about the opportunity, you know, to work with this full version of Score Relief. I think the point that you've made about the fact that, you know, the 10-minute version is going to give you that much more space, and it's much more sort of analogous, really, to working even up to sort of feature-length film, where you can develop, you know, themes and things like that. So yeah, that's great. So yeah, I mean, there's tons of questions. Obviously, you know, people are hopefully thinking about the next Score Relief and about other scoring competitions that are out there. I think it's a really important point that you've made, about the fact that there is really a difference between scoring for a competition and scoring for a real project. I'll just drop one little spoiler about the next Score Relief, which is that, we're really keen that the QTube is actually a platform for preparing people for working in the industry and not just like fun and games. And one of the things that we're doing with regard to trying to develop in that direction is for the forthcoming Score Relief, we're actually going to have a spotting session, which we're going to share with you guys, and we're going to have a spotting sheet as part of the actual pack that you will download, to take part in the competition. And of course, therefore, the spotting sheet will be used as a reference by the judges as well. So I think it helps to take Score Relief just that little bit step closer to, the idea of working on a real project. And of course, in the future, we're going to be able to do stuff with the short film that we've made. So yeah, we as well are quite conscious of that. The fact that Score Relief thus far is quite different from doing a real world project, and we're trying to kind of bring those two things together a little bit. So any suggestions, Mike, that you might have, or anybody else on doing that and making it more relevant, if you like, as opposed to just something that's good fun and good practice.
I think in general, this is something that Brian, you and I have talked about a bit, is thinking about how can stuff like this actually serve people towards the ultimate goal, which is getting more work and building a career out of all this. Because as you say, it's one thing to, kind of rescore a clip for fun, but you're not getting paid to do that. You're spending a lot of time to do that. So if you're investing your time and your effort into it, you want to get something out of it, whether you win a competition or not. And so, one, I would just say that feel free to offer any suggestions towards things that you think might be more useful. I know, Brian, you've done in the past also had kind of live meetups. And I think those things can be really useful, and especially for networking. It might seem counterintuitive at first, but networking with other composers is a really useful thing, whether they're your peers or whether they might be a little bit further ahead in their career. They might be somebody that you can help out. It doesn't mean that you need to become somebody's full-time assistant, but maybe they just need help for a couple weeks on a project. Maybe some score prep, maybe some, demoing. It's really good to know kind of who's out there and build more of your own community. So I think things like that, and really thinking of QTube as a community. I also try to curate a bit of that in my own Discord, and I don't think these things are competitive in any way. A lot of people, I've seen Gavin in here tonight, is very active in my Discord, and I think it's all just one big community. So so I think, if you guys feel like there's anything that you wish that you could have more of, do feel free to kind of reach out. Or if you have any questions about this kind of thing, like where do you go, where do you begin to kind of network? I get this question a lot. Feel free, if you've got questions now, just thinking about, I wanted to also offer another opportunity to be more kind of like industry questions for that kind of topic. So feel free to throw those in the chat. I'm happy to answer them, while we got the time here. In the meantime, there was another comment I saw up here from Razvan about the orchestration from these, that it was probably realized in a notation software rather than a DAW. I'll just say, I think that might be, maybe that's the case. But one thing, I'm using this as a launching point, because I think this is an interesting topic as well, is for me, I come more from a classical background. This is how I was trained. And so it always felt a lot easier and more comfortable to orchestrate in a notation software. But I kind of forced myself to get good at it in a DAW. And mostly because when working on bigger projects or having deadlines with like a lot of cues on a film, or having to turn around an episode of TV very quickly, I just don't have the time to go back and forth between two different software programs. So I recommend that. I think it's a good habit to try and kind of push yourself to get really good at it. And there was one project I was doing that it was actually an animated film, about a half hour long. And I remember I was cranking out cues on this where I was writing like 2 minutes a day. And it was, you always think like John Williams writes 2 minutes of orchestral music a day. So that's kind of the standard we want to work towards. I was working on that, but I wouldn't say that my orchestral music, my 2 minutes, was of the same quality as his 2 minutes, or John Powell's or something like that. So I think I realized when I was doing that yes, I'm getting it done and it's getting approved, and I'm proud of what I'm making, but the level of craft, there are levels to where what I could do if I had 4 days on these 2 minutes, I could really develop it. So I think that's also a muscle that you kind of build over time. But I was definitely having to do all that in the DAW. I ended up orchestrating that film, but that wouldn't have been necessarily the case. It didn't have to be. And that was a separate process. But yeah, so I encourage everyone to kind of do that, to get used to working in the DAW.
I'm gonna post. I'm gonna add the link to your previous masterclass with the Caminandes clip into the description of this video after we finish. I don't think YouTube allows me to post links in the chat, so I'll put it into the video description afterwards, because I think that's
a good idea. Yeah, we can put part one and two.
Yeah.
And actually the whole score for that, along with the video, like the actual video of the film, is on my website as well. So if you want to look detailed into the score, it's up there as a PDF specifically for that, to be a good reference. Also because I use it as a reference for score layout for my students, so that way.
Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about how your academy works? And because I think there's a live element to it, yeah, as well as a kind of pre-recorded, if you like, element. Do you want to talk about that?
Good thing, yeah. So as we mentioned at the start, we're also running I'm running a Black Friday sale, and there's a affiliate link through QTube as well. So if you kind of buy through Brian's link, you help out the QTube as well. Yeah, so the course is, essentially what I've taken the curriculum of what I've been teaching at Royal College of Music for a bunch of years now, and I've condensed it down into this course that's about 3.5 hours worth of content, but it's very condensed. So I wanted to make something that, instead of just sifting through hours and hours of somebody showing you, like a walkthrough or a tutorial, I wanted it to make sure that every sentence in the course matters and is useful information. So it's intended for you to take it at your own pace, but also that you can kind of go back and rewatch videos and pick up more points. So it's 5 units, and I take you through the whole process of scoring a film from start to finish. So from conceptualizing, coming up with themes and suites, demoing, foundations of mixing, setting music to picture, how you prepare for a recording session, and also how you do sort of small scale home studio recording and how you can mix that with your samples. So it's really intended to be kind of this overview and help you kind of fill in the gaps. If maybe you've done a bit of film scoring, you feel you're fairly experienced, but maybe you don't have a very clear method or approach to how you do it. That's part of the aim of it, is to deliver here's a very clear method of how you can approach a scene that's consistent, so that you can sort of scale that up, whether you're doing a short film or doing a whole feature. Yeah.
So what's the balance or the sort of mechanics for between what you've created, what exists already, and the sort of interactive element of it with yourself? How does that work?
Yeah, so I have sort of changed the structure a little bit of doing live streams, because I was doing those as part of the course. I've sort of taken that out, and now I'm doing it as a separate thing, which I'm going to launch from the new year. I was hoping to do that a little bit sooner, but there's just been a lot going on personally and professionally to I want to really deliver this in a way that gives a lot of value. So I'm hoping to launch that from the new year, either through Teachable or Patreon or something like that through a subscription. But I'm hoping to get back to doing twice weekly streams where you'll be able to submit your work, and it'll be a live session, be a group. You'll all be on the call, and we can review the work and kind of talk about it and give some direct feedback. So there's that element, as well as my Discord, which is just open. That's free. You don't have to be a part of the Academy. But there's a wonderful community over there where people are sharing their work and getting feedback from each other. And I try to chime in there and offer advice whenever I can as well.
And is there a link to the Discord on the Academy page?
There, I believe it's only on the checkout, but it's on my website. So if you go on my website, I've got a tab at the top that says Study with Me. And that will have previous masterclasses I've done, a link to my online course, as well as the Discord, all of that. So my website is a great point of reference.
And the website is simply mikeladouceur.com, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I've just seen a question come up as well about DAWs. So one, great that you're working in Dorico. As far as notation softwares, if anybody's thinking about, like, say you mostly work in a DAW and you're transferring to, you want to also work in notation, Dorico, I think, is the way to go. It's the future. The other programs, Sibelius and Finale, are not really advancing. So Dorico is great. But as far as DAWs, if you're on Windows, then Logic is out. So I'd recommend Cubase. It's either Cubase or Logic. Both are great programs. I don't think that, like, I just use Cubase. I used Logic for about 10 years. And then mostly when I was working with Lauren Bell for a few years, I switched to Cubase because he was on Cubase. So I had to just work in that. And pretty much anybody who's come through Hans Zimmer in some form or another is on Cubase. The whole remote control productions is Cubase. So Cubase is great. I think it has, obviously I've stuck with it because I think it's got a bit more functionality for the way that I work. And I think it's a little bit more customizable, more easily customizable with than Logic is, especially for setting up things like routing. So Cubase is great. I would, get it when you can. And it's something that they are updating it and they are adding features and stuff. So it's a developing program. I think also they are listening because they're a separate company. Steinberg just makes software like this. They listen to their audience a bit more rather than like, good luck getting features added to Logic, because it's a very niche part of what Apple does. So, there's obviously a development team on it, but I think that, as far as getting certain features and things, Cubase is more likely to kind of listen to their audience.
Okay, cool. Excellent. I'm not seeing much coming in the way of questions. We've done an hour. I'm delighted with that, Mike. Is there anything else that you wanted to particularly append at this stage?
Yeah, as I said, if you've got any other questions, anything you want to ask about, I might just talk a little bit more quickly about kind of show reels, because this is something that's come up before. And, since we're talking about like how you can use these films for show reels, I think it's good for, if you don't have one already, thinking towards kind of, getting a few different projects that are a bit diverse that you can put together. And I think it's good to have really high quality visuals as well as the audio. Obviously, the audio has to be top, but a good piece of advice is like, go on to, look up, like, if students from film school, or kind of, even if you look up like directors who've been at major festivals, like who won, best short at Cannes or something like that. Look up that director and see their website and try to see what their show reel looks like. It's often got like really great looking visuals and it's really cool. And you might even consider copying the structure of that a little bit, because that's what a director thinks is cool. That's kind of how they think work is really well presented. So that's a tip that, I think when you're putting yours together, you could consider, as well as when I put my show reel together, I always highlight kind of a bit about what the project is. So I'll put some text on the screen that might say like the director, and then, where, if it premiered at a major festival, if it won any awards, if it's being developed with a company, something like that, I think is also useful. And for audio, just putting together, like, usually people want like maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes if they're going to listen to an audio show reel. And so, yeah, try to put something like really gripping right at the front, and try to give a bit of variety. I think, maybe 3 different projects is probably enough. That way you give people a chance to actually listen to something and listen to it develop. I wouldn't put like, in 90 seconds, try to get 9 different 10-second clips. I think it would be really difficult to kind of hear what you do and how you develop something. Cool.
Making myself disappear. There we are. I'm back now. Yeah, great. And we have a question there just come in. Would you use YouTube as a base for a portfolio? What do you think? I mean, what do you think about social media and sort of places to, once you've got your portfolio, what to actually do with it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think YouTube wouldn't have been, I think, like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, YouTube was great for like hosting a video and then you would put that on your website. But I think now YouTube has really built out a lot of features where you have like a social media profile. So someone can go to your channel and they can see the links that you have, and you can set playlists, and you can make them very connected and cohesive by having like a link from, one of your other videos embedded at the end of your video. So definitely, I think YouTube is a great place for that. You can send people like, I think just on social media, it's become a necessary, it's been a necessary sort of part for promotion for a while, but like, having something where if somebody looks you up and they Google you, you should be on every platform, and you should have, maybe not every single platform if you totally don't use some, but like I don't use Snapchat, and I don't really use TikTok at all. But I've got Instagram, I've got X, I've got Facebook, I've got LinkedIn. I think those are all really good. I've got a YouTube channel, website. I try to kind of cross promote all of those, my Discord as well. But I think just figuring out like what is going to be your primary one, and then you can kind of filter all the others to that. So that might be your Instagram, and then YouTube can be a great place to host that. Of course, a website, I think having a website is really cheap and easy to build and maintain. So I think that's great. But that's kind of like your website is like your whole portfolio. Then YouTube could be maybe like your top clips. And then Instagram or Facebook or whatever is kind of like your short excerpts. So if you think about like Instagram is probably your elevator pitch of like, what do you do? What do you make? And then, the others are an opportunity to see like, okay, I'd like to actually see this thing that they scored, or you could send more direct links. Reel Crafter is another good one. I don't use Reel Crafter myself, but just because it's a bit expensive, but I really like the idea of it. You can upload kind of a catalog of all your music, and then you can kind of cut together bespoke reels within it. So it's a lot easier to kind of have like variety of your tracks. And then say you're pitching for a horror film, you can grab a few excerpts from different tracks and kind of put that together pretty quickly. But yeah, so that can be really useful.
Cool. I mean, going on from that, something that I've never asked you, I don't think, which I'm sure is going to be interesting for everybody else as well, is like, remembering back to the beginning of your career, how did you start to get traction? Working on real projects. Do you remember? Are there any tips or sort of insights from that come to mind?
Yeah, I think that you always feel like you're trying to get traction for the next thing. And I feel like now that I've seen a bit and I've kind of advanced in my career to a certain stage, there's still a lot of things that I want, of course, and I'm a fairly unknown name, as far as like I'm not a Hollywood composer in the way of like you're not going to find my stuff on billboards throughout LA yet. But I think when I was first, starting, I was doing a lot of short films and things, and a lot of it, like really, it comes down to direct networking. I think that's how you kind of get projects. So having a portfolio online, like I've maybe once or twice, been kind of like discovered randomly, where somebody's reached out on the internet and said, like, I came across your stuff and, found it. And that does help. I think actually from, the first time I did something with the QTube, a lot of people recognize me then, but you have to have your stuff like available to find on the internet, but that's not enough to get you work. You've got to meet people in person. So where I feel like that's kind of gone in stages and continues to go in stages is that initially, I'd say who was I networking with was student filmmakers. And so I would go to film school, I'd work on their project, and then I'd meet their colleagues. And then I'd get on their graduation film, and all of a sudden I was doing 5 graduation films. And then I'd go to the screenings. And, then all their classmates that didn't work with me got to see that, I did half of the screening. So that really helped, initially and spread kind of word of mouth. That then like the next year's class came up and then I was scoring their films because they went to see, like their colleagues ahead of them see all of their films. So I think that's kind of what it looked like at the start, was a lot of that, as well as, working with a couple people like outside of film schools who were maybe doing like small production company stuff. Like for a while I was doing these films that were like advertisements for this company, that like a landscaping company, and stuff. And it was all like very low money, but we were pushing to make things really exciting and kind of scoring films that were like adverts for landscaping, making them really epic. So, there was a lot of that at first. And then I think gradually, like now I think it's more about at my stage meeting like showrunners, producers, and people who are like a lot of the people that I've worked with and have known for a while are now kind of getting their break where they're finally getting funding for that first big feature, and it's not something that they're making for, 20,000 pounds. They're trying to get like 1.5 to 3 million to do like a small budget feature. So it's like, then it becomes like working on a real studio project. So I think, all of that grows. And actually like a docu-series that I'm working on at the moment is with an American production company. And that came through a composer friend of mine who asked me to come on and co-compose. So, I think that aspect of it doesn't really change. Even when you then get up to the top, it's like, maybe you've done a bunch of studio projects and you've been doing that for years, and it's like all of a sudden you get a call from Ridley Scott and, he wants you to do the next film. And it's something that like, that'll only happen after your work has been kind of recognized for a bit. So I think it's just the circle changes, but the hustle is the same. I think so. It's a good habit to get in now.
I guess
Yeah.
perhaps part of, it's pure guesswork, but I'm guessing that part of the secret is perhaps not to overthink it too much about where you want to get ultimately, and just think about where you want to get to next, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great summary. That's a great point. Yeah, I see a couple other questions in here as well. Is there a time when you gradually phase out older demo tracks? Absolutely. I think that I kind of recognize that almost in plateau stages, like you kind of get to a point and it's more about you no longer feel that it represents your skill level. And like after I recorded my album, I recorded my album with like London's best musicians, and really went all out with it. We recorded in Angel Studios, which is now part of the Abbey Road Institute, and I had one of the best conductors in the world on it. And so you get there and it's like, I'm super proud of it. Now I have 10 tracks that sound way better than anything I've ever done. And so it's really hard to think like, here's a track off my album and a shitty demo, So I think that as your standard for yourself grows, then you start to phase things out. And there's things like, I'm really proud of the composition, but the production of this is just not good enough. I can't send this. It'll, really bring down the level of everything overall. And even I remember with my publisher, we did a pitch years ago for a project that it was a Disney project, but the goal, like we kind of knew based on what it was and who I was pitching against that I wasn't going to get it. So we didn't even bother really sending tracks that we thought might be appropriate for the pitch. We just sent the best stuff I had for them to get an idea of what I made. So it was like the pitch was an excuse for like a conversation opener. Yeah. Cool. Steven's got a question about production library. Like music production libraries. There's a bunch out there, like, Bleeding Fingers has become a really big one now. Hans Zimmer's sort of production library, and they do a lot of bespoke stuff. They're occasionally putting calls out for new writers. There's some smaller ones as well. I think like, Universal or Sony. Universal and Sony are the two biggest in the world. Each of them owns a third of the market share, and then the other third is everybody else. So I think, it's like, oh, great. Well, of course, I'd love to write for Sony, but who do I write to? So I think that's where like try to look up like A&Rs or who's involved in the actual library arm of a big production company or a big publisher. There's also like West One Music Group is a great one that's based in London. They put out a lot and they have a really good ethos. There's another I write for in New York called Four Elements Music. Long and short of it is there's a ton of them out there, but my main recommendations are there's also a lot of crap ones that I think when you're writing, if you're writing for a big one, then, I think you should be commissioned on projects where like either you're going to like, they kind of already have a client base. And so, it's likely that your track is going to get picked because there's a couple structures for library music. You could be just writing tracks and submitting them, and then you earn a royalty share off of when they get selected. Or like I know Bleeding Fingers does more or less this. I'm pretty sure this is the exact structure, but you essentially get half of the royalties. So Hans gets the other half. Hans and I believe it's Russell Emanuel who is sort of the one who leads that up. But they pay you per track. So you like whether that track ever gets picked or not, they pay you a fee per track. So it's just a different licensing structure. I'm not saying one is better than the other or that one is unfair or more fair. They're just different. So I think though that when you think about that, there's then a lot of small libraries that they want to take advantage of a lot of younger composers, and they want to think like, oh, I'm writing to you. I'd love for you to make stuff for us. And it's like they have no client base and they're not offering you any upfront fee. Then you're going to do a lot of work. You're going to hand over exclusive rights and never be able to use it anywhere else. So I would just be cautious of that. If they have no client base and they're not offering you any money, then don't give them exclusivity. You can be like, great, you can use this track in your library, and if it gets picked, then we can split shares on it. But I also want to be able to put that in another library. So a lot of libraries are exclusive, so you just have to be a little mindful of that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Maybe we wrap things. I'm old, he says.
Yeah.
Aren't we all, mate? Aren't we all? No, that's great, Mike. I just want to add a couple of things, and then maybe we wrap it up. There's been a few questions about score relief in the chat. Hopefully I've answered those, but basically it's going to be launched in about a month's time. It's completely free to enter. To access the film will be completely free as well. We will have the same main prize, which will be having your score performed by Northern Film Orchestra, which is fantastic. We won't necessarily expect you to be an orchestration expert. we will be helping people, the winning composer to get their rescore ready for the orchestra and so on. But we'll be announcing a lot more information about score relief coming along. One thing I can say is that I know that the people who've won score relief previously have had opportunities as well as a result of that. So that's another road, I suppose, into the industry, is sort of entering these competitions. And if you're fortunate enough to win, then obviously that gets your profile up there. But even taking part, you've got something for your portfolio, and you've got knowledge and experience from the experience, and networking, of course. And then regarding portfolios, or show reels, really, that's something that we can help with as well, is helping you to put together a nice sort of video show reel. So just a few little thoughts on some of the topics that have come up. But yeah, regarding score relief, watch this space. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we'll be sharing lots of information over the next few weeks. It's very, very exciting. It's going to be a little bit different from what we've done before, in a good way. And I just want to thank you again, Mike, for your generosity in sharing your knowledge with us today and your time.
Well, thanks a lot, Brian. Thank you guys for joining. It's always a pleasure to come on here and just chat, share some stuff, and get to know a bit more of like the broader YouTube community. Once again, feel free to also come over and join my Discord if you're not a part of it. It's a great chat. And, you can also, I'm a little bit easier to kind of contact if you've got more specific questions and stuff there. So feel free to reach out. And one more time, my course is currently on sale. We've got the biggest sale I've ever done for it. So if you've ever been kind of on the fence about getting the course, now's the best time. It's at 70% off. So, so thank you guys very much. And thanks for joining, especially if you're in the UK on a Saturday evening. It's been a pleasure.
All right, lovely. Thanks, Mike. Take care. See you on the other side. And just to remind everybody that we have a screening in London of our short film on the 7th. I've put all of the links in the description for Mike's course and for accessing the Sprite Fright animation. And there's also a link for our event in London next month. So, yeah, hopefully some of you can make it. I know Stephen is planning to come along. Mike, I think you might come along for that one.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great Saturday evening and have a great weekend. And have a great one, Mike. See you soon.
Thanks.